And in this week in our Browns mock draft series, we're going to look at the cornerback position, another position that the Browns might select within the first round. And we're going to look at two players who are usually in the 26 spot territory when it comes to mock drafts around the media world. One is Asante Samuel Jr. out of Florida State, and then the other is Greg Newsome II out of Northwestern. So, Drew, let's go to you first here. How would you compare these two, and who would you pick?
Yeah, I'm going to answer the question that I wanted you to ask instead, which is which cornerback do you hope drops to the Cleveland Browns? And that answer is J.C. Horn from South Carolina. The way I have this, he is my number one cornerback. He allowed the lowest completion percentage in the SEC. He is fluid. He excels in press man coverage, which I think they're going to want to play with Denzel Ward on the opposite side. I think he is the perfect pair with Denzel Ward. You could have Greedy and then playing probably his proper role, which is in case of emergency to either of those two, he goes in to play that outside cornerback position. And I think it's possible he drops there because everybody else seems to love Patrick Surtain and Caleb Farley. Patrick Surtain the second from Alabama, Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech. I don't see either of them being available. They're also excellent prospects. I'm not going to take anything away from them, but every sort of analyst you'll see has those two ranked as their 1A, 1B sort of ranking. So there is a possibility that J.C. Horn slips into that range where it becomes plausible for the Browns to part with one of their third-round picks and move up 3 or 4 spots to go get them. So I'm going to avoid the 22nd overall pick like the plague. I think the Browns should be barred from ever drafting there, but I'm thinking that number 20, 21 spot, they can go up and get J.C. Horn, and I'd be thrilled. If all those three are off the board, yes, I agree that the next two sort of choices there are Greg Newsome II and Asante Samuel Jr. So of those two, who I have higher is Greg Newsome II from Northwestern. He just has the size. He has the size. He does a great job of turning his hips. He gets from back pedal to sprint as good as anybody in the class. Here's some just crazy stats on Greg Newsome II. So he played essentially 6 games in 2020. And in those 6 games, he was targeted 34 times. He allowed 12 catches for a total of 93 yards in 6 games in college football. He is an excellent prospect, somebody that I would be fine with them selecting. I think he's definitely in a tier below J.C. Horn, though. So, he's somebody that would compete with Greedy Williams. I don't know that he takes that spot right away, whereas I could see J.C. Horn would be an instant starter. So I like Greg Newsome II more than Asante Samuel Jr. based on size, speed, strength combination. Sleeper for you, because I gave you one on the defensive ends last week. Afitu Melifonwu from Syracuse. That he's 6'3", 215 pounds, runs a 4.4, and I think he will be available with their second round pick. If they don't go cornerback day 1, look for that name from Syracuse day 2.
Yeah, I don't know how many corners come out of the Big Ten unless you're a Buckeye. But Eric, what do you think? Do you think Greg Newsome is the favorite here in comparison to Samuel Jr.?
I mean, looking at the tail of the tape, these guys are almost mirror images of one another. You got Newsome at 6'1", 190. You got Asante at 5'10", 184. They both played 3 years. Obviously, as Drew had alluded to, Newsome had roughly around 20 games played, and Asante had 31 games played. So, I mean, there's just a lot of similarities, the way that they had not only their build and the way they played, it's their career. Kind of looking at the stats is, what I do is kind of projecting based on what Greg Newsome had done to what the number of games that Asante Samuel had played. The tackles for loss was 3-2 roughly in Asante Samuel's favor. The interceptions would have been about 4-2 in Asante Samuel's favor. The total tackles would have been about 129-97 in Greg Newsome's favor. Again, this is projecting because he played a lot less games. He actually had 20 less tackles, but he played in roughly half his games. And the fumble recoveries was about a push. So both of them have been dinged due to penalties that have occurred on, passing, grabbing too much, warranting that flag, being too aggressive, and their lack of lateral speed, which could be debated. If you look at their 40 times, Greg Newsome had a 4.39, Asante Samuel had a 4.45. I'm guessing if they can go up and down the field, they can go side to side. So I think I haven't looked at their 3-cone drill. I don't think it's like a DK Metcalf type of situation. So I think they're both going to be okay. And they're both physical. They're both physical players, and I'd rather worry about trying to coach that out of a guy as opposed to coach that into a guy who is too worried about getting in somebody's face and making a play. So I would perfectly be content with either of the two. I would take a situation of a bigger guy who is faster, and that they can kind of coach up who has had less games played than the other way around. There's an argument to say that, look at, I'm drawing a blank here. The guy from Tampa Bay whose dad played at Ohio State.
Antoine Winfield Jr.?
Yeah, Antoine Winfield Jr. You could look at the bloodlines and say, the same type of thing's going to happen with him as Antoine Winfield Jr. You have that bloodlines, and he's going to be a better player as a result. But I'm going to put that aside and go with Greg Newsome slightly. But I think you can't go wrong with either two of the guys. I mean, obviously, looking at the tape of J.C. Horn, yeah, he is an incredible athlete. These two are like pretty solid guys. I don't think they're lockdowns, but they're reliable guys that can help in your pass defense. And that's the price of winning, I guess, that we're not going to get these top tier guys, top tier talent. But I have a feeling that with our revamped secondary, that both these two could be solid contributors for the Browns. And I'm excited to see the way they go. I would be okay with a pass rusher, but if you take either of these guys, it's a good start.